President, I rise today to talk about something very rare in Congress these days. On Monday, after 4 long years of working hard through many uncertainties, Congress came together, Democrats and Republicans, to secure health care and pensions for our nation's coal miners. We did our job. And it just confirmed to me that we can do so much more. This is so important. It was the coal miners of America that made us look beyond politics. These were hardworking people. They weren't Democrats or Republicans. They were hardworking Americans that built America. And I want to give my sincere thanks to all of my colleagues for putting partisan politics aside and for rising above the divisiveness and tribalism in order to keep the promise that was made in 1946. Over 70 years ago, President Harry Truman recognized the importance of the workers that produced the coal for this country. After World War II, we had to keep this economy moving and we had to keep it churning, and it couldn't do it without the energy. And coal was basically the driver of this at that time. And it promised the government would guarantee our brave coal miners would benefit in return for their services. This agreement was sacred promise between workers and our country, and it captured the very best of our American values. This week, we kept the promise by including the bipartisan American Miners Act in the end-of-the-year funding bill. We kept our promise to 13,000 retired coal miners and their families who won't lose their health care by the end of the year. We kept our promise to the 92,000 recoaled miners and their families who won't see their pensions drastically reduced starting next year. Coal miners are the most patriotic people in America. They have done the heavy lifting. They have done everything that has been asked of them by this country. They provided the energy that made us the greatest country on earth, and today the superpower, the only superpower in the world. Because of what they have done for our country, we have won 2 world wars, we've built an iconic American cities, and we have a strong middle class. They continue to provide the resources that make us the energy leader of the world, all while advancing the American dream. The journey has not been short, and it sure hasn't been easy. In 2015, we knew the United Mine Workers of America's 1974 pension plan was severely underfunded. Unlike other public and private pension plans, the 1974 pension plan was well managed and funded prior to the crash in 2008, the economic financial crisis we had, which hit at a time when the plan was being drawn down more than ever because more people were retiring. Mine was basically the mining of coal with a new automation was being replaced. A lot of miners, so they were retiring out of it. This coupled with the fact that many of the beneficiaries are orphan retirees whose employers are no longer in the coal business. People had shut down. And the fact that there are only 10,000 active workers for 120,000 retirees. It doesn't take a mathematician to figure out this is not going to work. Placed the plan on the road to insolvency, and that was what started the collapse. If the plan became insolvent, these coal miners would have had their pensions cut, and the government pension beneficiary guarantee corporation would have had to step in and assume billions of dollars in liabilities. That would have started a tumbling effect of all of our private insured and private pension plans. That's what we were trying to prevent from happening. And so that's why I wrote the Miners Protection Act and introduced it with my fellow senator from West Virginia, Shelley Moore Capito, and Senators Bob Casey and Sherrod Brown. It was bipartisan from day one. I was told to go through the regular order, which I did. In March of 2016, Cecil Roberts, the president of the UMWA, testified in front of the Senate Finance Committee, and the Miners Protection Act was passed out of the Finance Committee in September with strong bipartisan support and the chairman of the majority. But a month later, 16,300 retired coal miners and their widows received notices that their health care would be terminated by the end of that year. And I knew that we could not let Congress leave for Christmas without fixing it. And this is a tactic that I haven't used. It's one of the rules and one of the privileges as a United States Senator each one of us have. But in December of 2016, I at that time said, I will shut down the government. I will make us go through the process and stay here as long as it would have taken to get this taken care of. I wanted to make sure that not one coal miner would lose their health care. Mitch McConnell would agree to nothing other than a 4-month extension on health care at that time. So 16,300 coal miners were forced to sit through the holidays and another 4 months of uncertainty, not knowing if it was going to come to an end. You talk about cruel and unusual punishment, that was it. So things started to look up. In January of 2017, I received assurances from then President-elect Donald Trump that he was committed to finding a fix. But by March, 22,600 coal miners received letters telling them their health care would be terminated by the end of April. By the end of April, it was gone. In typical fashion, Congress waited until the very last minute. But on May 1st, we secured permanent health care fix for 22,600 retired coal miners and their families. Although this was a huge win, we still needed to fulfill other obligations and secure the miners' pension because it was in dire need and it was in jeopardy of being cut drastically. So now I was more determined than ever. I turned around and immediately introduced the American Miners Protection Act with Senator Capito, Congressman McKinley, and Congressman Welch to secure pensions for 92,000 coal miners. Now it was not only bipartisan, it was bicameral. And in February of 2018, I was appointed to the bipartisan bicameral Joint Select Committee, the tasked with solving the country's pension crisis, including our coal miners with all of our other pensioners and our central states who are in dire need of our help too. And in February, and the United Mine Worker Pension Fund was the first fund in jeopardy. So I made it very clear during that. I said, if this starts tumbling, if we go down, we'll have to count on the PPGC, which basically is the federal government funded. And if that happens, we're going to put that in insolvency. Then everything starts tumbling at a much faster rate. And it would be an absolute financial calamity to this country. So things came to a head in October of this year. Murray Energy declared bankruptcy. So just this October, the largest coal producer we have with the union workers was Murray Coal Company. They declared bankruptcy. That significantly, basically, sped up the deadline for pensions and truly put us in a death spiral. Instead of going insolvent in 2022, which is what was predicted, the UMWA pension fund would now expedite and speed up to insolvency by 2020, next year. Not only that, but in between the time of securing health care and now 3 coal companies had gone bankrupt, putting another 13,000 more coal miners in jeopardy of losing their health care. 1,000 would have lost theirs this end of this month, another 12,000 in March. This bankruptcy in particular got the attention of many of my colleagues, and I appreciate all of you so much knowing how difficult this was going to be on so many people and their families. And it was a call to action for Congress to step up to the plate and honor the promises made to our miners. And that is the only pension system in America that has a seal of approval by Congress and the President of the United States in 1946, the only one. So in November, I was proud to partner with a bipartisan group of my colleagues again, including the majority leader this time, which I'm so appreciative, an act that would introduce the bipartisan American Miners Act that would secure pensions for 92,000 coal miners and their families, and the 13,000 coal miners and their families that would get health care. Even though that was good news, we still weren't over the finish line. On December the 11th, for the first time since I've been here for 9 years, I put a hold on all Senate legislation. And I said, there's no way that I'm going to go home or anyone else is going to go home and enjoy a Christmas with their family and a New Year when you have this many people in dire straits and jeopardy, the people that build America. If we can't stand up for them, who do we stand up for? So I said, this is what we're going to do. And I was very clear. I telegraphed it by December 11th. There was no surprises. And after many negotiations with the House of Representatives and the White House, we finally secured a permanent fix in the spending deal, ensuring retired coal miners won't lose their health care or pensions. Throughout all of these years, thousands of retired coal miners from all across the country have come to Congress. I know you've seen them walking around. They have their shirts on and the proud green shirts that they're working and walking the halls, meeting with every person in Congress that they possibly can to tell their stories and meet with every member. And the reason for that, this is people who have given their heart and soul and their blood and their sweat to this country. And they're just saying, this is something that we negotiated. We didn't take the money home. We basically invested this money into our pension and our health care. And now because of a bankruptcy loophole, we're the last in lines and we lose everything. Something's wrong. It's not who we are as Americans. So we worked through all this. They walked the halls tirelessly, fighting for what they earned, for what they paid for, and truly what they deserved. And this would have never happened without their relentless dedication. And I have said this, dedicated themselves religiously for almost 4 years, day in and day out, coming here at their expense. And it has been an honor of my life to fight alongside them. I can't be more proud of anything that I've been able to do in public service than to stand shoulder to shoulder with the people who've made America. And I feel so honored to have had that opportunity. I'd like to thank all of my colleagues, current and former members of this body, who have stood with them throughout the years, even when the going got extremely tough. I ask unanimous consent to add a list of all those who have co-sponsored these bills to the record, Mr. President.
Objection.
They have all recognized, just like President Truman, that our country would not be where it is today without them, and that we needed to get this done, and we did. I want to give you a little bit of a background and history of why this is so near and dear to me. My grandfather came to this country, this wonderful country, United States of America, in 1900 as a baby. He started working in the coal mines at 9 years of age, so he was able to get a 4th grade education before he had to go to help support his family. In 1927, he had my grandmother. She had 4 children, and she was pregnant with my uncle, so she would have had 4 3/4 of a child at that time. And my grandfather would always tell me, he says, Joe, he says, we couldn't pay the bills at the end of the month. He says, I never did see any money because it was all script, and it went to the company house, the company store. So the old song, I owe my soul to the company store, he truly did. And he just says, we can't make it. And he would go out and he would tell people, we've got to do better than this. This is not, we have no health care, we got nothing to look forward to, and we can't pay our bills. And we're working 6 days like dogs. He had a mule, Papa had a mule, he had a buggy, and he had a car by light. And he would go in and have to do everything. He would have to, and he'd love to say, fire in a hole. And he'd always tell me. And basically what he meant by that, he'd had to go back into the face of the mine. He'd have to get a block of coal he was assigned to, and he'd have to drill it. He'd have to tamper and put the dynamite in it, and he'd pack it. And then he had to go back, and he had to fire it. And then everything would blast away, and he had to get all the coal and load it by hand. This is what he did from 9 years of age. So he was trying to improve the quality of life for all coal miners. He said, this is not right. Well, he fought for those rights of coal miners. It's ingrained in my family history, and we have made that. What the rest of this story is, in 1927, with those 4 children and pregnant with Uncle Jimmy, because he was talking of improving the quality of life for the people that did this unbelievable work for this great country at a time when this country needed it, and the industrial age is coming on. Christmas Eve, they came to the company house where he lived and rented, took all their furniture and threw it in the middle of the street and threw them out because they said he was an organizer. Papa was a survivor. He was just trying to survive, and he wanted other people to have the same quality of opportunity to survive. So I know this is ingrained in me. It's something that let me just tell you, when you saw these miners and you saw the fight they had in them, that's why. But there's still more that we have to do. We have to do much more, Mr. President. If you want to stop this from continuing and repeating itself in so many different professions, we've got to change the bankruptcy laws of America. We cannot allow the bankruptcy laws in this country that puts the hardworking people, that takes money out of their paycheck and put it and let people from Wall Street come in there and take over through the hedge funds or whatever they do and rob them and put them at the back of the line. Every working person in America that pays in out of their paychecks and their sweat and their blood and their hard work should be at the front of the line getting equal treatment, not just the financial institutions. And that's what I'm asking in a bipartisan way. If we're going to treat the people who continue to make this country go, make this economy turn, then you've got to make sure you protect them too. And we can only do that in this body, nowhere else. So in January, when we get back from recess, I will be working with my colleagues to move this legislation through Congress, because if we cannot continue to stand up for American workers ahead of the almighty dollar and Wall Street greed, what in the world are we here for? What's our purpose? How do you go home and look at people? So sorry you lost everything. I wish we could do more. Well, we can do more. We just showed that we could do more for the miners. Let's make sure that every working person is protected. I've always said that we must set our priorities based on our values. If you can't set your priorities based on your values, you better check the box in the morning before you go to work. We have done that with the fight for our coal miners, and we will continue to do that for all American workers. By working together across party lines since 2016, we've been able to secure lifetime health care benefits for 36,000 coal miners and their families. Think about it. If you were one of those members of the family, if you were one of the coal miners, we've also secured 92,000 miners and their families' pensions. Most of these pensions are going to widows. The husbands have passed away. You know what the average pension for a coal miner's widow is today? Less than $600. She doesn't have a portfolio. She don't have investments in the stock market. She has Social Security and that $590 pension. And they wanted to take that away. That's what we fought for. That's why every one of us should be proud. Democrats and Republicans, we did our job because we stood here as Americans. We stood here as representing America, not representing our parties and our tribal interests, and not condemning each other. We did this working together, and we can continue to do a lot more. So again, I want to thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank all of my colleagues. I want to thank Cecil Roberts, President of the United Mine Workers, for being shoulder to shoulder all the way with us, and all the coal miners and their families. My colleagues in the House and the Senate, and President Trump for coming together to keep the promise that we made, that we've all made, and we should continue to make and keep. So I want to thank you all very much from the bottom of my heart. Merry Christmas to all, and to all, good night. This has been very emotional, as you can tell. But I know what the place can do, Mr. President. I've been here long enough, and I've heard enough. When I was governor of the state and Bob Byrd was sitting in his seat over there, I saw the good that came from it. And it was basically always, everybody in here has good in them. They wouldn't be here. Everybody came here for the right reason, or they wouldn't have gotten here. This is not an easy place to get to. But by golly, when we get here, we ought to do the right thing. And we did it. I can go home, you can go home, you can feel proud of what we did here. And we finally did the job that we were asked to do, and I want to continue doing that with you. Thank you, Mr. President.